Horus and Jason, and this is The Emperor of Man, The Rise of Humanity, Warhammer 40,000 lore/history. This is the last part of part 1, because in the previous part we saw, basically the Emperor of Man and the Unification War. We learned about the, Malcator, basically how he was the right-hand man of the Emperor, and how Emperor basically rose up, how Mechanicus, those Martian people, basically partnered with the Emperor at that time. So now we're going to see the Great Crusade and the fall of the Eldar. Yeah, I don't know what Great Crusade is about. If it is anything like that, the 13th Black Crusade, right, which is the crusade against the chaos, so maybe it's about the chaos since the word crusade is in it, but I don't know. The fall of the Eldar is the one I'm interested about. I don't know if it's gonna cover details about Eldar here, since this is not the Eldar video, but still I'm interested in that, because after the creation of Slaanesh, during that period of time, Emperor of Man rose up and unification wars and everything. But now we're going to go into detail about how Eldars fell down from their position and how that had effect basically in the galaxy. Remember, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like, subscribe, so I know which type of videos to react to more, I guess. Check out the Warhammer 40k reactions that I did. There is a playlist in the cards about Warhammer 40k playlist, something like that. Check out the playlist too, like, history, internet historian, John Tron, in different playlists too, I guess. Yeah, let's watch it.
And so we reach the beginning of Millennium 31. With Mars now allied to the Emperor's Imperium, the Legiones Astartes war machine had significantly expanded. The Mechanicum would provide the battle barges needed to transport the Space Marines throughout the galaxy. They also brought to the table the Titans, some of the most powerful war machines ever created. Their very presence on approaching a humanoid system would often be enough to prevent a conflict. The shock and awe of facing such incomprehensible opponents would quickly lead a populace to understand they had no hope of preventing the Imperial Expeditionary Forces from achieving their goals. The crusade would initially be led by the Emperor himself, as he commanded a massive fleet of Astartes. As the crusade gathered pace and the Primarchs were recovered, these expeditionary fleets would number in the thousands. Before we talk about the crusade itself though, which I have tried to condense as much as possible, I want to first talk briefly on the Astartes or Space Marines. Now, a regular misconception about Space Marines is that because they wear near identical armour and were originally produced via a variation of cloning, or at least grown in a lab, that they somehow have no personality or little differentiation between them. It is also often assumed that Space Marines will blindly follow any commands given to the letter, no matter the consequences. After all, they are the superior, unquestioning warriors in the universe, right? Both of these myths is fundamentally wrong. Each Space Marine is an individual person with their own character, traits, to an extent personal principles. There are many documented events in which these human elements would have a role to play in subsequent events. Space Marines, although superhuman, are still human, and as such the Emperor deemed it necessary to have a senior position with whom Astartes could use as a point of reference to discuss matters of morality, to understand their purpose, their mission, and sometimes to give guidance beyond purely military matters during the Crusade and the expeditionary forces. Enter.
I mean, yeah, it kind of makes sense, right? In the end, if you create an intelligent being, that being is going to be intelligent, right? They're supposed to be superhuman in intelligence too. They're not just some mindless brutes. So saying that they just are mindless husks who just follow orders is kind of weird. Of course they're not. Just because they're cloned doesn't mean they're not. They're like that. So of course they would have, their own personalities, morality, and everything.
The iterators. Imperial iterators were the most persuasive of public speakers. They are masters of manipulating a crowd's opinion, and iterators would counsel also Marines as they voyaged through the galaxy. But their role went beyond this and was critical at the inception of the Great Crusade. They were placed among the expeditionary forces to aid in reuniting humanity and turning lost human civilizations to the Imperial cause. The Emperor appointed them to spread the Imperial truth. Truths such as the rejection of religious faith to enforce secular rule, and unnecessary wasteful squabbling over power and resources. These were all seen as significantly counterproductive and opposite to the objectives of the Imperium. The first Primarch to be reunited with the Imperial fleet was Horus of the Lunar Wolves. He greatly admired the iterators' work, so much so that he asked them to also tutor his captains and legionnaires. Horus believed that once the crusade was completed, there would be an end to the war, and that the Astartes would first need to find a peacetime vocation. The most famous iterator during the Great Crusade was primary iterator Kyril Sindaman, who served aboard Horus's flagship. Iterators are seen as the precursors to Imperial Guard commissars and Astartes chaplains. The iterators and then later the chaplains are an example of the more human services required by Space Marines. Documented records have shown that they have been regularly known to question ethics, purpose, and even their own morality, despite an Astartes essentially being immortal. They are destined to die in battle, as that is their true purpose. Yeah. And despite this predefined fate, they are far from the emotionless drones that some would assume. They are a living embodiment of humanity, a distillation of spirit and mind. The Emperor's Great Crusade to reunify humanity had begun in earnest. This was an operation...
Yeah, so basically, obviously I don't know much about Warhammer 40k lore, in this sense at least. I've been recently reacting to this, in past month, right? Since 1st October, I started to react to Warhammer 40k thing. So far, everything that I've seen, I never thought of Space Marine as some, like he said, mindless brute type of thing, who just, follow orders to the point, I guess. But everything I've seen just shows that they're disciplined, right? They have discipline and principles. They will follow the orders. That's their discipline, not because, they don't know anything better. Obviously, they are human beings. They have morality in everything. So, yeah.
On a truly epic scale, millions of troops, tens of thousands of ships forged by the Mars Mechanicum, this would be humanity's defining moment, to reach out and forge the greatest empire in the galaxy. The Imperial forces comprise soldiers, naval officers, and most importantly, the Astartes legions. They were configured and divided into expeditionary fleets supported by all manner of cruisers, transports, scout teams, dropships, and so on. Commanded by the Emperor and his war council, but also by individuals placed in charge of these expeditionary forces. It's important to remember that these forces were as much exploratory as they were tasked with an important mission. A great deal of time had passed during the Age of Strife, as well as incalculable quantities of data had been lost in the process. The Imperial forces simply didn't know exactly where all the colonies were, nor their status. Had they been destroyed in civil war, alien genocide, or perhaps the opposite and expanded to a degree where they would not need aid, but instead submission? All of these were unknowns. Many locations could be estimated as to whether or not they had been colonized in the past. The Mechanicum could provide some information from past scripture as to where human colonies had been located, although more importantly, they wanted to know where we could find ancient and undiscovered technology. The expeditionary fleet would even initiate a search on the basis of myths and rumour. No stone was to be left unturned in the search for the lost civilizations of mankind. Before they embarked on their journey though, one other important task was required. Although the warp storms had subsided, allowing travel once again across great distances, the Navigator class from the past that would guide ships through the warp. This system though was far from perfect, and the Emperor had a greater plan. On Earth, the Emperor ordered construction of the Great Astronomicon. Tech priests from Mars were drafted in to aid in this project, and its purpose would be to enable...
Yeah, before we proceed, the fact that after the Age of Strife, where Emperor just decided to go on the Great Crusade, where he's going to unify all the humanity, where he doesn't even know where they all are, obviously, because the information will be lost. The scriptures from Mechanicus basically could help them, sure, but you can't be sure since galactic scale we are talking about. Certain civilization could be expanded in a way that they might be a powerhouse now. So they would need they wouldn't need help, but they would need to be defeat in a way that they would submit to the Emperor. So the massive, you could also have to do a massive war against humans just to make sure that they submit in front of the emperor. All these elements that you have to think about before going to war. This is some large scale event that happened, basically the Great Crusade around this time. And I don't think emperor could have done all these things without the help of Mechanicus, those Martian people, because the Titans and their equipments are really crucial in this.
Enable the emperor to guide, oversee and command his vast fleet all from Terra. It created a system for him to focus, amplify and broadcast psychic signals and energy. It would stand as an unchanging marker, a lighthouse for the Navigators, a point of reference around which they could plan all their travels. This certainly was an important factor in the success of the Crusade, as it enabled the Navigators to travel through the warp in great leaps and faster than they ever had done before. In addition to this, the Emperor would also create the Astropaths. These were powerful psykers whose sole task would be in relaying communications from the fleet and later the established Imperium back to the ruling council on Terra. The vast distances involved meant that the Astropaths would become the only communication link between Terra and the distant colonies. However, as
The warp network. These people are basically the warp network.
with the Eldar, the risk of possession to the Astropaths by warp demons consuming the psykers and thereby enabling them to travel into the material world was one that the Emperor was all too aware of, especially after his Primarchs had been scattered throughout the galaxy. To this end, the Astropaths would undergo an extreme and harsh process of toughening against the threat of warp entities.
How?
The Emperor himself would manipulate and reform their mind into a protective vessel, making them nearly immune to risks from the warp. This process, though, was agonizing and extremely dangerous.
That face tells you everything, right? Like how fucked up that would have been. Look at that. It's like, pain constantly, man.
Many psykers were killed in the process or went completely insane. Even if they survived the process, a universal effect would see their optic nerves become damaged beyond repair. This meant all Astropaths are blind. From the Imperial perspective, though, this was a necessary consequence as they continued to be an integral part of Imperial infrastructure. The Crusades had begun, and alongside Space Marines were hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Imperial troops, humans who were salvaged from the aftermath of Terra and structured into an effective, albeit expendable fighting force. This Imperial Guard was strengthened and resupplied as they reconnected and conquered lost human colonies. A secondary benefit was that in drafting local military forces into the expeditionary force, it removed these planets' ability to rebel effectively against the newly created Imperial outposts on each planet. Also, in these early days, taxes and tribute to the Imperium were not strictly required, but Imperial commanders stationed on new colonies of the Imperium would often require supplies for the continuing crusade. Many systems and colonies would need help rebuilding or periods after generations of schooling by iterators to bring them in line and around to the Imperial truth and loyalty to the Imperium. Some worlds, though, who
Alright, this just occurred to me, so that's why I'm pausing and saying this, otherwise I'll forget it. So that, the Emperor basically strong-armed every single human colony and made sure that they are part of the Imperium. Then the Horus heresy happens, then the Emperor goes the way that we know of right now in the 40k time, I guess, in 41st millennium. How he's this husk of what he used to be, and now we have this religion, and religion is all around the Emperor. Anybody says anything against the Emperor is heresy. So all this started when emperors started to strong arm every single humans, because I will assume that emperor basically appealed to the humans like, I'm your savior or something like that, and everybody agreed. But no, he literally conquered them one by one, helped them where he could, and obviously they would have joined in that way. But where they couldn't, basically, he was basically strong armed them, just like how wars used to fought, long ago, right? Where you defeat a civilization, they join you, right? You don't necessarily have to pay them anything, but the ongoing crusade, you have to pay for that. Obviously, people are not going to be happy about that. So this is what I'm thinking. Obviously, in the 41st millennia, anybody who says anything against the emperor, that would be heresy. But how many people like the Imperium and emperor? Is that a possibility in the future that some kind of an event would make Imperium a bit weak, and that would basically cause revolts all around the other imperial worlds who don't like the Emperor and the Imperium. I mean, is that the case? Or every human colony just love the Emperor? Because I'm pretty sure the latter one can't be true. It must be the former one. Everybody's afraid of Imperium, that's why they're part of the Imperium. Otherwise, as soon as they get a chance, they would revolt.
Who were self-sufficient had survived intact and would even welcome the arriving Imperial forces with open arms as long-awaited brothers, with glorious celebrations and immediate support, much to the satisfaction and pride of the expeditionary forces, who were all too happy to welcome their brothers back to the Imperium. Such events were a blessing to behold though, as many worlds were either barren wastes long since destroyed, with only ruined remains to prove that anyone had ever existed there. Or they were found to be locked in brutally tyrannical dictatorships and required sometimes days, often weeks of orbital and ground assault to subdue and conquer these false dictators. Religious doctrine and faith were especially highlighted to be crushed on all worlds. The Emperor would never allow these practices to infringe or threaten the Imperium, as he was part.
Obviously, lots of world, welcomed the Emperor with open arms. Some of the world had dictators there to crush. I don't know. It just to me feel like an Emperor basically coming, right, subduing the civilization if they're strong enough, or helping them if need be. There will be lots of world that are bitter about it, right? Obviously, they go along with the Emperor because they are the Emperor is the best hope for the humanity, but they would still be bitter about it. Like how they have to feed the, basically the Great Crusade. They have to, I guess pay something for that, right? I don't know. It just feels like there will be people like, the Emperor, that asshole, right?
Partly responsible and had even seen the effects these caused on humanity millennia ago in the first age of mankind. The Emperor also made an important choice that upon arrival to new worlds, any psychers discovered were told to expect transport back to Terra, courtesy of secretive black ships. Here, they would be tested on their journey back to Earth to their limit. They would endure nightmarish examination, some dying from the trials or executed for being just too unstable. Others, though, ended up completely losing their minds in the process of these harsh examinations. The fate of these individuals was at the time unknown. It later transpired that if they were proven strong and capable enough in manipulating their psychic power, they would become stock for creating new astropaths by the Emperor. Any younger but highly powerful psychers were subsequently distributed to some of the Space Marine legions who had begun a Librarius program, creating special Astartes who are capable of wielding immense psychic power.
Grenades.
Others, though, disappeared from record entirely, leading to supposition of secret organisations who even today are not fully disclosed. The Crusade continued for centuries, stretching out across the galaxy. Finally, the Primarchs were reunited with their legions and were duly given positions on the Crusade and Imperial War Council. The Primarch figures, though, were not suited to this level of administration. They were at their best out among their Marines leading campaigns. So it fell to the administrators of Man to run the day-to-day Crusade infrastructure. One important figure arises again, that of Malcador the Sigillite. He would become a keystone in the execution of the Crusade and one of the most loyal and valuable members of the Imperial Council. The power of the Imperium had now reached its peak. There seemed to be little, if anything, that could threaten, damage or destabilize the glory and power of the now reunited Imperium of Man. The Crusade had in fact been so successful that after a chain of impressive victories, the Emperor decided he could fully return to Terra to continue managing his plans there and working on new secret projects. His Primarchs were surely more than capable of finishing the now simple task of scouting and securing any fringe colonies and bringing the Crusade to a successful conclusion. After a specifically great victory on Ulanor, the Emperor selected the first Primarch and commander of the Lunar Wolves, known as Horus Lupercal, and bestowed upon him the title of Warmaster. This title established him as a leader of the Imperial military forces in lieu of the Emperor, and all other Primarchs and Imperial forces would follow the Warmaster's commands as if they were the Emperor's. Not all the other Primarchs seemed to be entirely comfortable, not only with this decision, but also with the Emperor's choice to leave them and return to Terra. Considering their strength of character, this seems somewhat surprising, but if anything it shows that their bond they shared with the Emperor was perhaps not rock solid, and some of them felt bewildered he should choose to leave them on the fringes of the galaxy when overall victory seems so near and so secure. Horus, whilst being a supreme master of military matters, was also less well known for being exceptionally tactful and charismatic.
So I guess the bit of saltiness there. Why did you choose Horus, right? Bit of saltiness there, and obviously they were crafted from the genes of the Emperor. So they are not some weak entities. They are fucking powerful. These Primarchs. So obviously they would be loyal to the Emperor, but they would still have that kind of since they're powerful, they'll be like, okay, come on, man, the Emperor is gonna just leave us at the edge of the galaxy, not fight with us, not see this great crusade through. Emperor is gonna make Horus the leader. We're supposed to listen to him. There was some form of ego and some form of that kind of thing, right? Because they are powerful. They're Primarchs basically.
He would take time to speak to each of his brother Primarchs in turn. Understanding them as he did, he would employ his various skills of perception and charisma to appeal to their individual natures and reassure them that although the Emperor had granted him this glorious honour, it was the Brotherhood together who would achieve the ultimate victory. This helped quell some of the disquiet, but it was not only the Primarchs who felt bemused that the Emperor had abandoned them, and in time, this in combination with other unfortunate events would lead to the darkest of catastrophes. In fact, there have been many examples throughout human history where withholding information would lead to disaster, and this period for humanity would be no exception. The Emperor's decision to not make his Space Marines aware of the dark forces of chaos for their own benefit, in fact even to this day, the vast majority of the Imperial citizenship lives blissfully unaware of the darkness that lies in the Immaterium. The Emperor's precise reasons for this
back up there.
Not make his Space Marines aware of the dark forces of chaos for their own benefit. In fact, even to this day, the vast majority of the Imperial citizenship.
Is he talking about the 41st millennia? Even then, vast majority of people don't know about chaos.
Lives blissfully unaware of the darkness that lies in the Immaterium. The Emperor's precise reasons for this are not crystal clear. Perhaps he felt that humans were too easily persuaded or tempted by the promises of quick, easy power. But whatever the reason, the consequences for the Primarchs and Space Marines to not be able to see this danger, as well as the Imperium, would be disastrous.
Oh, that is so true, right? Humans are connected to the warp all the times. So now if you tell them about the dangers of chaos, they would think too much about it now, right? Since their thoughts are the way to access the warp, they could be more easily corruptible now. Since they realize something like that exists, the chaos forces exist in the Immaterium. So by telling them, they would be more susceptible to the, susceptible from the chaos, right? Because they will be more easily corruptible now. I don't know. Or maybe that's what Emperor thought. It could be that.
The Astartes legions had encountered vague clues and shrouded warnings on some lost human worlds they encountered. Whispers in the wind, apparent possession of marines. Horus and his Lunar Wolves discovered direct evidence of some dark force when they encountered a lost but highly advanced human colony known as the interrex in the later stages of the expeditionary crusade. As the fleet travelled to the interrex homeworld, they engaged in extended peaceful negotiations. Again, this was an example of the Space Marines and notably Horus not giving preference to immediate combat, but in choosing a peaceful option. If this was viable to them, it was always preferable. Their mission of Imperial Truth was without question. It was the only resolution that would ever be acceptable to the fleet though. Now during this encounter, Garviel Loken, who was the Lunar Wolves' 10th captain and a member of the Mournival, the Mournival was a close and under Imperial rule illegal clique of brothers, but one which Horus had allowed to exist so as to help advise him on matters of importance. Loken was among the Warmaster's party when they attended a reception with these interrex during negotiations. He was drawn into a casual conversation with one of the interrex guard, who admitted that the interrex had learned to tread carefully with any newcomers to their people because they feared the taint of chaos with a K on these newcomers. it becomes apparent that the interrex colony had made dealings with the Xenos race, the Eldar, during the Age of Strife, and the interrex explain how it is their understanding from what they could discern from the Eldar that chaos is a threat like no other. That it would not appear brutal or blunt at first, but subtly. They feared chaos.
Yeah, so dealing with the Eldar, obviously Eldars would be able to tell them about the dangers of chaos.
Deceptively approaching their space, posing as a friend, seeking to bleed its way into their confidences, and then destroy them mercilessly from the inside out. Loken was shaken at these unknown revelations, and the Warmaster Horus would later assure him that there is no fundamental evil in the galaxy, and that is the end of the matter. The seeds of suspicion are planted. Loken cannot shake this feeling that something, somewhere, is wrong. But before he'd have any opportunity to follow up and explore these doubts, a break-in occurs in one of the Interrex's most sacred museums, and a highly advanced blade known as an anatheme is stolen. At this time, despite Horus's pleas for restraint, negotiations would now collapse, and the Lunar Wolves and the advanced Interrex would fall into all-out conflict. The Space Marines of Horus are ultimately victorious over the Interrex, but it's a victory Horus takes no pleasure in, as it's born out of misunderstanding and was a tragic, unnecessary conflict. These events, though, would become just a singular fragment in a deteriorating pattern of troubles that would haunt and gesticulate within Horus, as well as his unease then irradiating out into his brother Primarchs, the Mournival, his and other legions. Unbeknownst to Horus, a sequence of events had been now initiated, and their cascade could not be prevented. So why are these events so important? Well, for one, it gives more insight into the fact that at the time, it seems barely any Space Marines at any level of rank had any knowledge of chaos.
See, I think what I thought is right. The thought that chaos could exist gives way to chaos to corrupt them to begin with. So these people basically had interaction with the Eldar, and Eldar told them about the chaos and danger of chaos, and they in turn tell the Space Marines all that. Now they start to have these doubts, right? That guy start to have doubts. And that is the reason why he get corrupted by chaos, because since your mind is the connection to the warp, your thoughts and everything, now your thought is constantly barraged by the thought of chaos and the evil of chaos. It becomes more easier for chaos to, I guess, attack you in a way. Right? So I guess that is what happened.
And if they did, it was only the vaguest of suspicions, the kind that could easily be brushed off by speaking to, say, some iterators. They had no idea about the true nature or capabilities of the malevolent force known as chaos. By comparison, the Emperor understood all too well the dark forces that had very recently annihilated the Eldar and consumed so many human colonies throughout the Age of Strife. It seems strange that he would choose not to gift his Astartes, and more importantly his Primarchs, with this information so that they could best protect against its darkness.
That was so fucking stupid. That's the reason why he's sitting on a throne right now, half dead.
But perhaps he feared that knowledge of the warp entities would do more harm than good, instead choosing ignorance as the best policy.
Yeah, I guessed it right. That Emperor probably thought that, but that was still a mistake. If he thinks Primarchs are so powerful, which they are essence of him, he should at least let Primarch know that, so they could manage their armies and their Space Marine better. He can't just fuck off to Terra without telling them and send them out to the dangers of this. Obviously somebody would tell them, somebody who had interaction with Eldars or something eventually would tell them what chaos is and everything around it. And he should have known that just thought of chaos forces would be good enough for them to be susceptible from chaos's attack. So it would have been better for Emperor himself to make sure that these Primarchs are strong and can fight against the chaos by preparing them, rather than making sure that they are ignorant to it, because that's just fucked up. He should have been smarter than that. Right? I understand the point, I guessed it just a moment ago, that he probably just thought that by not telling them, they have the best defenses against chaos. Because they don't know about the chaos, they will not think about the chaos, so chaos will not attack them in that sense, right? Chaos will not be attracted to them in that sense. But he must have known that somebody eventually will tell them, somebody who has interaction with Eldars or some outer Xenos, right? I don't know.
However, a combination of time, doubt, rejection, jealousy, and greed brewing in corners of the Astartes legions would prove this to be an unwise decision.
Seriously. Emperor was damn stupid here. He fucked himself. That's it. So that's it, part 1, I guess. It was 1.5 hour long part. But yeah, seriously, that one mistake the Emperor made, he should have trusted his Primarchs, right? He should have trusted his Primarchs there and should have prepared them, so none of this would have happened. Horus would not have been corrupted by chaos. Maybe it's a stretch. Maybe it's a really stretch to think that even preparing them is good enough. But maybe, I don't know, the war that came after that with the Horus heresy, as is known, wouldn't have been so strong if they were prepared somewhat against the chaos. And now their faith against the Emperor is also go down because, you know, they learn about these forces of chaos from outside rather than from the Emperor himself. So how are you supposed to trust the Emperor from now on? So that, you know, shaken faith also pushes themselves more towards the chaos. Now lots of people are easily, easily can be corrupted by chaos because they have doubts for the Emperor. Loyalty is shaken. Yeah. Well, that was the Emperor of Man, the Rise of Humanity, Warhammer 40,000 lore by Lutin09. I loved this video, and there are 3 more parts of this. 2nd part, 3rd part, and 4th part that was recently just uploaded, I guess a day or 2 ago. Yeah. I'm going to continue to, I guess react to this, or maybe you think I should react to some other, some other Xenos lore or something. I don't know, comment down. Should I continue to react to this, the Emperor of Man series, Emperor of Man 2? Next time, or should I react to some other Lutin video or any other video? Comment down, I guess. Yeah, this was so fucking good. I love Warhammer 40,000 and how deep lore it is, and I'm getting stunned every single day, like really how deep it is. The people are telling me this is so deep that there are so many books about just one topic. I mean, how a lore can be that deep is just ridiculous. Alright, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like, subscribe, check out the reaction I did, there's a link in the description. Check out the cast for plays like Warhammer 40k, John Tron, Interhistorian, History, Kazakh Nutshell, and yeah, I'll see you next time.